Greetings from California. I'm Ryder Bullock, and this is the Ryder Report. Tonight, we bring you a unique and focused conversation with candidates for statewide office, centered not on talking points but on real concerns of sports fans across the Golden State. Over the past several weeks, thousands of questions were submitted, polled directly by me, and gathered across social media from fans, voters, and everyday Californians who care deeply about the future of sports in this state. From those submissions, I have narrowed the field down to 12 key topics, 12 questions that reflect what is actively being debated among voters right now. Neither the candidates nor their campaigns have seen these questions. To preserve the integrity of the discussion, these interviews are being recorded and released on a delayed basis. While the core 12 topics will remain the same for each candidate, the exact wording and order of the questions may vary. This is not a debate. Each candidate will appear alone, giving them the opportunity to speak directly and in depth on the issues, without interruption, without time limits, and without rehearsed exchanges. My goal is simple: to give sports fans across California clear, honest insights into where these candidates stand on the issues that matter to them. And with that, we are proud to welcome Dennis Faitosa with us here, who is running for Congress, California's 30th Congressional District. Dennis, tell us about yourself and why you are running for the great state of California.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryder. I am running because, well, multiple reasons. I'm a small business owner. I have just been pummeled by the city for several reasons: taxes, regulations. It's really made it a hindrance as far as expanding my business. And I'm not the only one experiencing that. Getting permitting isn't easy. That's why you recently saw places like LA County providing permitting for people to start opening their restaurants inside their own living rooms. One of the most popular coffee shops in LA right now is in somebody's living room because it's that expensive, and it is. So as somebody who at one point had a business in a commercial space and has since restructured it so that I don't have to deal with all those hindrances, I understand a bit of that. So that was one of the reasons. There was also the reason of, I've always been somebody who's been politically interested, politically involved. I've been a public figure online for many years, doing cultural and political commentary. And I got to a point a few years ago that I thought it would be important to start getting involved in my party locally and organizing on the grassroots level and helping out candidates, because I wanted to help elect more Republicans in California. And I ended up realizing in that process that I could also, start taking some of those steps to help my party and help my state in that manner. And I thought ultimately, if you're going to have as many criticisms as you have of the politics and the political culture in California, might as well get involved and start trying to change it from within. So those are a couple of the reasons.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm going to start with the word that is on everybody's mind, and that is affordability. Sports in California have become an unaffordable luxury. Families are being priced out of stadiums not because they don't love their teams, but because basic life costs have skyrocketed. That's not strictly a league issue, that's an economic issue. What specific policies of yours would make it possible for average Californians to attend a ball game again?
Well, that's really unfortunate to hear. I think one of the things that's affecting every Californian nowadays, it's the cost of living. We've seen it increase exorbitantly. We see it at the pump constantly, and I'm pretty sure that energy prices end up having a widespread effect on everything. on food prices, not just your gas prices, but on food prices, on I assume to some extent as well on ticket prices. So I would, part of my proposal, and I've already signed this. I am against raising taxes on the federal level. I will vote against any bill that increases taxes on the federal level for anybody. And one thing that I also think that would be useful for many Californians, we are currently paying through the nose on gas prices. I have looked at several different figures. We have different kinds of fees and taxes on our gas that makes it more expensive than any other state. We're number one for gas prices out of the entire country. That's why you see right now it's pretty close to $7 a gallon. I would say cut back some of those fees and the double dipping that the state is doing on taxes on gas. We could possibly, I could try to see this. This would obviously be a little hard to work out, but if we could cut federal taxes as well on gas to just make sure that people have a little more money in their pockets, that we can bring prices down a little bit across the board. That's one way that we could help lower ticket prices, hopefully.
Okay. You mentioned taxes. California teams enjoy billions in taxpayer-funded incentives, stadium deals, and municipal support. Meanwhile, fans pay more and get less. Do you believe California's major sports franchises are taking advantage of taxpayers?
Well, I'd have to look at some more of the data as far as the amount of tax breaks they provide. I know that a lot of these organizations employ a lot of individuals. They provide a good source of entertainment. It's an overall net positive usually. On the fiscal side, I'm really not that familiar with how much they're taking in, how much they're getting cut. But I just do believe that at this point, we are in a point in this country where, the regular Joe, the ordinary person deserves to get more tax breaks. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security are a good start, but I'd like to see it across the board.
Would you require teams to deliver measurable public benefit in exchange for public money?
Yeah. I think that sort of accountability, I think, is necessary at every level, right? If you are getting any sort of tax break or any sort of federal funding, I think that you need to show that you are providing a public good, right? So I'm for increasing accountability at every level. This is something I talk about just outside of the sports scope a bit, but we really see how egregious it can get on the homelessness level, and there's no accountability there. So across the board, I think it's in the interest of taxpayers, and as somebody who will be there representing my district, I would stand up for folks in my district and make sure that we know where every dollar goes and that it's well spent.
Okay. Let's transition to sports betting. The Los Angeles Lakers are in the playoffs. The Knicks play the Atlanta Hawks tonight. A lot of money being bet on basketball. Caesars projects about $30 billion will be bet on the NBA playoffs this year. However, California fans cannot legally make sports bets. Prop 27, we thought we had a deal, but that deal failed because voters didn't trust the system or the partnerships between tribes and commercial operators. If elected, would you support a new sports betting framework, and what would it look like?
I have to look at the plan that was proposed across the board. Gambling does come, especially in the formal setting of like a casino, it does come with a lot of different behaviors that aren't really, it's not really like a family environment. Nobody would describe it like that. Online gambling, on the other hand, it's a little bit different. However, you do have a lot of people, there is that concern of people who will become addicted to gambling, or even, we've seen this primarily on social media where a lot of these these online gambling firms will target young people, through hiring influencers. There were situations with Aiden Ross in the past and other influencers who were promoting gambling on their live streams. I think we'd have to be cautious on how those plans are made. Obviously, I I ultimately believe in liberty. I'm a social conservative. I'm a Christian. I personally do not like engaging in gambling, but I believe that uh, if there is a public will out there for something like this, I'd like to look at a plan and see how we could best structure it so that the people who are interested in practicing it can do it safely, and so that we can potentially create another source of revenue, uh, you know, regulator revenue that could benefit the Californians.
Should California join the 38 states that already have legalized it, or do you see gambling as more harm than help?
Personally, I see it as more harm, but this is the thing. I'm a practical person at the end of the day. If it's in the interests of of the people in my district, I'm not going to be ideologically rigid where I, you know, don't represent their interests. I'm there to represent them, right? So if it does fit the interests of people in my district, that's how I would carry myself, how I would find that out. I can do independent polling. I can do town halls where I hear people out and I hear their cases. I'm constantly out walking in my district and meeting people. So that's the kind of representative that I am, that I want to be in Congress. I'm not going to be ideologically captured to inflicting my opinions and my will on the people in my district. I want to best represent them. I obviously have to hear them out and see what they want in order to be able to do that.
Okay. Going to transition from in-person sports betting to online betting. California bans online sports betting, but allows betting on political outcomes. Right now, on Kalshi, I can vote on Fiona May. I can get Fiona May at 10-1 to win the California lieutenant governor's race. But I cannot make a bet
on good odds.
I can make that bet. And but I cannot make a bet on the Los Angeles Lakers. Critics say it invites dark money and even election manipulation. Should California ban political betting?
I mean, it's a bit of a double standard, what you've pointed out. You can do one form of betting, but you can't do another. I think we should look at why that double standard is allowed. And like you said, it could potentially be open to influence. I've seen this happen before where you have races that aren't really having polling, and they'll just start pulling up Kalshi numbers or something like that. And at the end of the day, if you have this double standard where part of it is allowed, you can't bet on the Lakers, but you can bet on this obscure race. I mean, yeah, we have to look at those cases and see why we have that double standard and correct that issue.
Why do you think we allow gambling on politics while outlawing it for sports? Why do you think?
It really is strange. I would assume that there could be some aspect like you presented of there being potentially some interest in influencing races in a certain manner. I don't know how that would specifically play out because I'm not really familiar with how the odds are chosen or how this plays out. I did see yesterday one of my opponents, he actually shared on his story the odds on Kalshi, I think, for our race. And I wasn't even aware this was.
You're at 65%.
I'm at what?
You're at 65%.
Actually surprised. I was taken aback. Not that I was ahead, but I was surprised that our race was there because I wasn't even aware that this was going on. I was like, oh wow, they just came up on my on how Instagram suggests like different stories. I was scrolling through and it just popped up. I was like, wait a minute, that's my name. So it was interesting to see. I still don't know what the benefit is, like how people. I'd have to look more into that process, and again, why it's allowed on one side and why it's not on the other. It seems like a strange double standard, and like maybe that's just from my analytical commentary point of view. Whenever there's a double standard or there's some level of hypocrisy or something that's happening where policy doesn't match, where one person can do something, another one can't. It always invites investigation. At least on my, on my side of things, that's how I would think of it. I would want to look at why can you do this, but you can't do it like this.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay. Want to get to another hot button issue outside of affordability. The number one political issue in sports is transgenders. The IOC has barred transgenders from competing in the next summer games, which will be in Los Angeles. Governor Gavin Newsom said allowing biological males in women's sports is, quote, deeply unfair. But he's done nothing to change California policy. Where do you stand on the issue of transgenders in sports?
Well, I think if we're dealing with sports fairly, we have to look at biology, right? Because that is ultimately what defines outcomes, right? We were speaking about this a few days ago. I have a background in swimming, and it's very evident to me that there is a very different biology between men and women, right?
Absolutely.
Men
Absolutely.
usually have a bigger wingspan. We have a higher lung capacity. We have a greater bone density. Our muscle mass is much bigger, in some instances up to 30% bigger than most women. So it's just unfair to allow somebody who has developed as a male. And even before that, I mean, there are people that are pro-trans that have made arguments. Well, this person started transitioning pre-puberty. I still think that there's still an aspect of disadvantage. You see, even the case of that boxer who fought in the Olympics and ended up winning. That person was supposedly intersex. Turns out that they ended up just turning out to be trans.
Right.
But even then, I think that right now the standard that they have is where they test the level of testosterone to determine whether or not it's an equal pairing, right? Whether or not you can compete in the category. I think that biologically you should fit within the category that you biologically fit in. If we're talking about the exception where it's an intersex person, then we have to take it on a case-to-case basis and do that sort of testosterone determination to see if it's an equal footing. But even then, I mean, it's just historically, people have always sought to have advantages when they're in sports. You look at some really atrocious cases all the way back to East Germany before the Berlin Wall fell. There were some atrocious cases of things that athletes were doing, especially in swimming, to get ahead. So, you want a fair playing field ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There. Should California require athletes to compete based on biological sex?
Yeah, biology should define where you compete, what category. We also have, here's something else that I just remembered. We also have age groups. I mean, if we're going to be that loosey-goosey about where people fall in the categories, why even have age groups? Have somebody who's competing against a 45-year-old. You know what I mean? So we have that understanding that it's unfair for an 8-year-old to compete against a 25-year-old just because developmentally they're in very different stages of their life. So apply an equal standard.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So now my question is, how would you balance fairness and competition with respect and dignity for trans youth?
Yeah, I think that's important as well. That's a good point to bring up. There are a lot of different ideas and solutions that people have thrown out there. Perhaps create their own league, right? And create their own space where they can compete. They'll be part of the same. Let's just keep consistent. If it's a swim meet, You have a male, you have a female, and then you have a trans category.
Yeah.
Right? That's usually how it goes. You have like three. If you're doing the 100-meter freestyle, you have 3 heats of men, 3 heats of women, and then you have 1 or 2 or how many heats you have of trans people, and you treat them the same, but you recognize, okay, you want to identify differently, right? You compete in this other category. And then, obviously, then we could have a larger discussion, trans male to female, trans female to male. Do they get different categories? And I guess, yeah, because there would still be a difference biologically there, that it would be an unfair competition. So I think that's a relatively fair way that gives them dignity. And here's the thing. I think that a lot of people who are having this discussion, they don't necessarily like hate trans people. They're not, transphobia isn't a thing. I don't think anybody's actually scared of trans people. They're not scared of them existing in society. I think by default, the majority of people treat most people with dignity and respect.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think it's more about an understanding of encroachment in women's spaces, particularly, and just respecting that category so that women can compete fairly, right? It's not about kicking trans people to the curb. It's not about disenfranchising them. They can compete, but let's just be realistic. Let's give them their own category, because that could very well solve the problem.
Yeah. Let's move on to college sports. We just wrapped up the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament, and the topic in a lot of the pregame shows was NIL chaos. The NIL landscape is a mess. Inconsistent state laws, pay for play disguised as sponsorships, and no federal standard. What do you think California's responsibility is in protecting its student athletes?
Well, what I can say, I'm not too familiar with the NIL
stuff, yeah.
format, how that works. But what I can say is, as somebody who at one point was considering entering the NCAA, I was actually going to be in the SEC because I was down in Florida.
Hey, go Gators.
So this is the thing. Athletes bring a tremendous amount of value to a school. And very often, at least when I was up for being a student athlete, you just get a certain level of, a scholarship or some level of coverage. You're allowed with some restrictions on the sponsorships you take. I'm not too familiar with how the NIL model kind of redid that. I assume from what I've heard and what I've seen people like Dave Portnoy talk about, it feels a little bit more like professional sports. Like people can actually get paid to be traded and stuff. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would go as far to say that the amount of value that athletes bring, you get big schools like UF, the amount of Tim Tebow's jerseys they sold, they made so much money off of that. I believe that to some extent, student athletes should benefit from their popularity and how much value they bring to the school. Now, whether or not there's an aspect of corruption with that should definitely be looked at, because we're still dealing with people who are in the formative years of their lives. And we've seen people's lives completely derail as a result of either it being too restrictive, right? Because that's what happened with Johnny Manziel. He stepped out of it. He tried to make money on the side, monetizing his popularity. But that went completely bad for him, while at the same time being too loose, where you just all of a sudden there's no infrastructure around this person, and everything in a different manner collapses. So I think that there just has to be an understanding of the value that these athletes bring and how to best set them up so that they can also benefit from, very often, and you look at it, a lot of these student athletes, very often this is the height of their careers. Like a lot of them.
No, absolutely.
A lot of them don't really graduate to the NFL for talking football. A lot of them don't really go to the NBA. If they do, it's hard to transition into that career. So why not allow these athletes to benefit from everything that they're bringing to the school, but do it in a structured manner where it's where everybody can win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Just talk about it from a basketball standpoint. You get a kid that starts out maybe at a mid-major school in Iona. He's making $1 million there. And, and these guys that you said Florida, so I'll pick on Florida for a minute. But, he goes, okay, I can go and I can make $3 million at Florida. So his sophomore year, he's a freshman at Iona. He goes sophomore year to Florida. Sophomore year at Florida, he, does some things. And then, the Michigan, they got some money. They just won the national championship. So Michigan now approaches him. Hey, I'll give you $5 million. So now he's a junior. He's a junior at Michigan. Then his senior year, he goes to UConn. Now he's making $7 million. So in 4 years, he's gone to 4 different schools. Mm-hmm. He's made all this money. He hasn't really been able to define his craft because he's getting with a new team every year. So he's not probably going to get drafted. He's, he's 22 years old probably. He's got all this money, but he's going to get a job making nothing because he doesn't have a degree, doesn't have anything. And there's just a lot of mental health that goes into that, and a lot of we are going down a dangerous, slippery slope, I think.
So from what I'm understanding, it's affecting their schooling as well as their ability to make this a career after the fact. Right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it seems like there isn't enough of a structure around it to guarantee that. Because here's the thing: all these kids, all these folks, they're all in school still. Like that's still, you're a student athlete, but the priority should be to finish your schooling. So and that was, at least when I was still a student athlete, schooling always came first, right? Yep. If in swimming, if there were a semester that somebody got all C's, they were all of a sudden on the side lane, right? It wasn't like they were just slow. It's like, okay, you got to work your way back up academically. You got to be good because you represent the team. If somebody is straggling, you gotta pick up. So, it sounds like there needs to just be more structure around it. And I don't know, as a legislator on the federal level, what I could do specifically. This does sound a bit like a state issue. I'm not sure if this is nationally. Is it nationally that?
Well, so I'll fill you in here. The NCAA has basically said, hey, we need help. And the president has drafted, he got a sports council together with Nick Saban and other predominant figures in sports. And he has drafted an executive order that is going through motion. I don't understand how that works, but it's not actually in effect, but he has drafted the order. The NCAA, though, thinks that nothing's going to change without congressional legislature. And so the president has tapped Ted Cruz to lead the Saving Sports agenda. So that's where we are. We're waiting on Ted Cruz to draft a bill.
Oh, yeah? Well, I hope he drafts a good bill. Sports, this is the thing. I'm a big fan of sports as far as a formative habit. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you perseverance. There's so many important life skills that you learn in sports, and just how hard it is to become very good at a sport. I think that it's terrific that we have a system where people can pay for their schooling using sports. And I think that we should preserve that pathway, not allow it to be just because of bad policy or bad business to just be undone and sacrifice the lives of all these young men and women that have trained so much to arrive at this level. It's not easy to be a college athlete. A lot of these folks have sacrificed already a lot by the time they arrive at that level. So, I'd love to see that plan. I'd love to see what he comes up with. I hope it's good.
Is Senator Cruz the right man for the job?
I don't know about that. I don't know what his specific leanings with sports are. I imagine that because Trump nominating him, I think Ted probably knows something. Trump wouldn't make a decision like that, if he wouldn't nominate somebody to do something unless they had some level of know-how or some kind of experience. So I assume that Senator Cruz is pretty versed in this. If not, I assume that he will likely have a team around him or advisors that will help him. I mean, there's no lack of resources when you're a senator like that. You have access to a lot of different resources. It's just a matter of will, really.
Okay. Let's move on to performance enhancement. PED, that's performance enhancement drugs, are being used across multiple sports despite years of regulation. What responsibilities do states have, if any, to ensure athletes are competing clean?
Well, there's the fairness aspect of it. When people use PEDs in an undisclosed manner, you could, especially if you're dealing with like a UFC fight, you could be putting the other person's life at risk, right? Because you're going to be much stronger, much more agile than you would at your weight, right? You will, in cases of like swimming, there were numerous rumors throughout the years that I remember of. I don't remember specifically what the PED was, but it would increase the oxygen level that your blood could operate at, that your body could operate at. You could carry, your blood cells could carry more oxygen. I've heard of people taking growth hormone during puberty to grow a lot. It's definitely a mix of an ethical issue as well as a safety issue, because we see you see the side effects of people who take testosterone for many years, who take steroids. Their bodies get deformed. They stop, especially for men, you stop being able to produce the hormones your body needs to maintain itself. And then as far as the aspect of fairness, if everybody's clean in a race, or everybody, even in the case of, like, let's say everybody's taking a PED, but somebody gets access to some other technology and nobody is privy to it because it's all under the table, right? Then it's not a fair playing field. I've always had kind of like my point of view has always been kind of like coming from that background and knowing how endemic it is, from a sports background, knowing how much people just try to have an edge. And we were talking about this kind of in the trans issue as well. Is kind of like slightly associated to an extent. I always thought that if people really are committed and want to use PEDs, then maybe create a separate league for these folks. Now, obviously, that would be like, I would assume that most athletes, like you're getting like the 100 meters, that everybody would want to go the fastest time. So you would just come up with a league like that. But then you have the health aspect of it. Like you're more prone to heart disease. You're more prone to, so as far as ethics go, I think as long as you're an adult, you really want to do this, if there's a legal way to have another league or something like that, then go and make that choice. You're making an informed decision. I personally wouldn't do it. But I think everything, again, going back to that conversation about the trans leagues, we should maintain a level of fairness, right? Because that's when you're watching a sport, that's really what there's no suspension of disbelief, right? Like with entertainment, you're buying into the proposition that everybody is starting out from a level playing field, right? Really, the things that are defining the game are natural ability, training, cohesion with the team, as well as sometimes just luck, right? Yeah. And those factors we've accepted as virtuous aspects that are virtuous aspects to define a game. When you introduce PEDs, then it's like somebody getting an unfair advantage. That's why if people are really committed to that, then perhaps think about a separate league or a separate way to accommodate that wouldn't infringe on the fairness of the sport. But I think it's in the interests of sports fans to maintain a level of fairness that everybody agrees on, whether that includes PEDs or not. I think it's something that we could always discuss to an end, and that decision ultimately comes down to the athlete, whether they want to or not put their body through that. My understanding is, I think Barry Bonds, and I watched this documentary about the guy who developed the PEDs that Barry Bonds used, which was like basically undetectable, but he ended up with several health conditions as a result of all the peds that he took. I think even Logan Paul, he's been taking peptides, the Liver King. There are a lot of examples who are not, professional athletes and can take peds, and you see what happens to them. It's not something that long term your body is built to be able to sustain. You can't be juiced up. So, it's an interesting issue.
Yeah. Would you support stricter testing laws for American-based teams and events?
Yeah, I think as long as we maintain those standards of fairness, then we should continue testing. And obviously with this kind of stuff, because you're always developing new technology, you'd have to have the test keep up. So, unfortunately, people always want to have an edge. Some folks do it by cheating. So you got to kind of, keep things up.
Okay. Let's transition here to technology and officiating transparency. Video review and officiating errors have become weekly headlines. The NBA Replay Center is in New Jersey. Should California, the home of Silicon Valley, be leading national efforts to modernize officiating systems for major sports leagues?
100%. Why not? We have every piece of cutting edge technology is mostly developed in California. We have Silicon Valley, like you mentioned. We're at the forefront of AI. I mean, I can only imagine how we can use all the ways that we can use AI to figure out, if the ball actually went in or not, if that was a legal catch, if his foot did in fact step on the line when he was grabbing the ball and throwing back in bounds. There's just so many different areas of contention in sports, and very often you're relying on cameras to shoot at a fixed frame rate, and officials that sometimes, for one reason or another, don't make the best decisions. Sometimes maybe they're just having a bad day and not seeing things right. Other times they may feel pressured. In the worst case scenario, sometimes they're bought out. Who knows? But I think that as far as introducing or moving forward that aspect of fairness, AI can do tremendous things, and California should 100% be at the forefront of it.
Do you believe fans deserve more transparency in how games are judged?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think more transparency in general is something that always benefits society, be it in how games are decided, how the calls are made, or how the government is run, or how elections are run. I'm so pro transparency. One of the things I want to do in Congress when I'm out there is I want to live stream myself 24 hours a day.
Wow.
I enjoy it. Yeah, just go out to go in and out of meetings, show people really what is happening, that full level of transparency, so they can understand, oh, this is who I elected. Let me go check in on him. Let me see what he's doing. Oh, he's talking to so-and-so. What are they talking about? Oh, really? This is, so obviously, if you're spending money, for example, if you're a Dodgers fan, let's bring it back to sports.
Yeah.
If you're a Dodgers fan and you're buying the jersey, you're paying the ticket, you're paying the gas to go to the stadium,
paying $7 a gallon. Matter of fact, real quick, I paid $6.49 in Pasadena on Saturday for gas.
Oof. It's unbelievable. That's crazy. We got to change that.
Yeah.
But if you're paying that much in taxes, in gas, then you're paying the parking lot. Then you're walking over. You're buying a hot dog. You're doing the whole thing. The ticket price is too. That comes up to a pretty expensive day.
Yeah.
You should be afforded. If your team loses that day on a bad call, you should be afforded the transparency to know exactly why that call was made,
right?
What the discussion was around it. Obviously, there are different ways that you could do that, but 100%, the investment that it takes nowadays to go to a game, it's like if two people go to a game, that could be a $500 night, depending on the game.
Yep. No, absolutely, it is a very high cost, and We definitely need to get it fixed, no doubt about that. And hopefully you'll get in office and you can start making your changes. Want to move on to foreign influences in sports. Saudi Arabia, the main country of discussion. Saudi money has upended global sports with live golf, soccer, boxing. World Wrestling Entertainment has even announced that WrestleMania will be in Saudi Arabia. As congressman, do you believe that the United States should take a stance on foreign influence in teams, leagues, or events hosted in our country?
I think as long as let's say it's we're talking about the Dodgers brand, right? If they're going to go play a game abroad, and a lot of football teams do this as well, they do like an international tour. If they're playing a game abroad, I think that as long as the deals are fair, as long as they're being allowed to protect their brand, as long as this is something that that we can help them, because look, this is in the interest of America as well. This is a way that we can bring American businesses and branding and our culture to the world. We can export it, right? As long as we're protecting these American companies and these athletes, and that the deals are fair, I think that it's in the interest of our country to export our culture, to bring more people to watch our sports, right? Now, I start seeing a little bit of a line when you start seeing people like LeBron James advocating for the Chinese government above the American government. To me, that's more of like a political issue of, but I think LeBron just isn't very politically versed, and doesn't really have an understanding of geopolitics. So that is definitely an issue. I think there's also an issue that I think it's more endemic in soccer as well. A lot of the European soccer teams, from my understanding, they're mostly owned by Russian oligarchs and Saudi Arabian teams. Correct. And there is an aspect of, these $100 million trades and a lot of cases that I've seen of athletes not really seeing any sort of benefit from being traded, any sort of money coming to them as a result of that extraordinary trade. So we always have to ensure that, sure, there's a lot of money that these folks are putting into our sports and our brands, but let's make sure that the athletes and the people involved with the brands are actually getting something out of it. They're not just being exploited in this in this system that could very well just end up disenfranchising them, because it's just the money just in sports in the last 20, 25 years has just been so extraordinary. I mean, you couldn't even think that somebody would sign a $10 million contract. Now it's like a $50 million contract is cheap, No,
absolutely. Absolutely. So just to clarify, you're okay with Live Golf playing events in America?
Deal with Live Golf? What's the situation with them?
Oh, okay. So Live Golf is basically a Saudi-backed. And when I say Saudi-backed, I just mean they're the ones funding the money. They're the ones that are on the payroll. And they are basically a golf league. They basically are it's a PGA Tour equivalent. And so a lot of the PGA players defected the PGA, went over to Live to chase $1 million contracts and all that. And they play events here in America.
They've propped themselves up as a competitor. They've kind of taken the talent away from the PGA. How's the PGA doing?
PGA's fine. The PGA has noticed no changes other than, their big stars, have a lot of their big stars have gone, like Phil Mickelson. You don't see Phil Mickelson on tour anymore because he's on Live. DeChambeau, another one. And so a lot of big names, Patrick Reed and John Rahm, others who have defected and gone to this Live tour.
Interesting, because at one point I'm a free market capitalist. I want there to be competition, but I also an iconic brand like the PGA that's been around for so many years, it's not the kind of thing that you want to see it disappear or not that that's what's happening, but let's extrapolate to the most extreme. Uh, you wouldn't want to see an iconic American brand like the PGA be eaten from within just because you have this outside foreign money coming in and just funneling talent out of it, right? Um, and it's to some extent we'd have to look at how the economics of that is working out, how we can better support the PGA. Maybe we give them some more tax breaks. Maybe we work with the PGA to give some sort of tax credit to players who go and play on the PGA. Not that we would want to interfere with the market. Obviously, I'm thinking out loud here. I don't really like big government and interfering with government, but for government interfering in private business. But for the sake of preserving an iconic American brand, this could be something we could maybe talk about. At the end of the day, like I said, I'm very much against government intervention, but I do recognize that there is a specific value in maintaining these iconic American brands that are globally known, have a history of building this marketplace, right? We don't necessarily want to allow our businesses to be ransacked because all of a sudden, you have people losing their jobs because all these jobs are going abroad. It's kind of what's happening. It's the conundrum that we're in with Hollywood right now. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of Hollywood production has gone abroad. That's primarily because of cost, right? So what do you do? Do you create these protectionist measures and kind of try to force the industry back to LA? Is that really going to work long term? It's a discussion that we've seen play out in so many different ways, and the market ends up ultimately deciding where the money goes, where everything goes, and that's why I think it's hard for government to actually create markets around things and enforce these things. But I would definitely want to take a look at how we can help PGA maintain their place in the marketplace so they're not wiped out by foreign money.
Okay. I'm going to focus on Saudi Arabia again. Saudi Arabia is transforming from an oil giant into a global sports hub under Vision 2030, with its sports market projected to reach $22.4 billion by 2030. Critics call it sports washing. And if you need a definition of sports washing, I can give it to you. But, okay. The definition of sports washing is a term used to describe the practice of an individual, corporation, or government using sports to improve a tarnished reputation or distract from controversies such as human rights or corruption. What is your stance on sports washing?
Yeah, we see this happen very often with the Olympics and the World Cup, right? The Olympics, I specifically remember the first time noticing this. It was 2008. China had been having a lot of human rights abuses exposed throughout many years. They have concentration camps with the Uyghurs and different religious minorities in the country. They have a huge issue with organ harvesting. And I remember that at the time they were able to create a lot of, positive buzz and all this stuff. And I guess that's the first time I noticed that. I know I think the 2018 World Cup that was in Qatar. I think Qatar had something.
Qatar had. You're close. 2018 was Sochi, Russia, but yes, another example. And then Qatar was in 22, 4 years later there.
So Qatar also had numerous human rights abuses going in. I mean, they basically had a slave class that built all of their stadiums. You had reports of people dying from the heat and the work conditions. I don't think that's good. I mean, obviously, you want to have proper and fair conditions, and you also don't want to allow governments to basically wash their reputations clean, use the efforts and labors of people who are, mostly ethical, right? And most athletes are very ethical, and we were just discussing this with
Yes.
Head's issue. Like it's not like it's widespread mostly. So you're taking people who are very dedicated to their craft, who are at the top of their game, and who should be entitled to take good contracts and money. Um, and they're basically being laundered for government propaganda. I mean, there's definitely. I think that the way to really combat that would be through narrative, by keeping the conversation alive,
Yeah.
right? By using the platform that I have to in Congress to have hearings about this, so we can better inform ourselves in issues by doing interviews like this, talking about it. Because ultimately, that's what they want to do. They want to change the conversation, right?
Absolutely, yes. So do you think Saudi Arabia is guilty of sports washing?
If they're guilty of sports washing, I mean, what specifically? I'm familiar with some of their human rights abuses. Are you referring to specific human rights abuses that they're using sports to wash out, or
Yes. Here I can. In 1 second, I had the news article and then I lost it. Sorry.
good?
The kingdoms. This is the public investment fund. The kingdom's $925 billion sovereign wealth fund, led by the Crown Prince, is the primary vehicle for these deals. It is accused of using its economic power to launder the nation's reputation. In 2023, an interview was conducted by the Crown Prince and stated that he doesn't care about the sports washing label. He argued that if sports investments increase the kingdom's GDP by 1%, he will continue doing sports washing for the economic benefit. Human rights contradictions. Major events have also contrasted with reports with the 2018 assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The kafala system, which critics say subjects migrant workers to exploitation while they build infrastructure for events like the 2034 World Cup.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure nationally as a congressman what I can do to stop them from doing it.
But you think they're guilty of it?
I think they're guilty of it. I mean, it's a congressional position. I wouldn't be in a position to judge somebody like that, but I do believe that there is some aspect. I mean, there's definitely corruption that goes on with Saudi Arabia. They were one of the last countries to abolish slavery. So, they only recently started providing equal rights for women, for them to be able to drive around,
Right.
and not wear, head coverings. From my understanding, they're moving away from their petro model, because they're anticipating that they will be outproduced relatively soon, and that they won't be able to. This isn't a sustainable model that they're in, and I assume that the sports aspect of it is more of like a propaganda level diversification. So it's they've definitely, as a government, they've done some horrendous things, So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see how this is propaganda. I mean, you see propaganda at every level, right? Around governments all over the world. They're all trying to kind of launder their image. And wouldn't be surprised that Saudi Arabia is doing this as well.
Okay. Final question on this topic. What do you think about the World Wrestling Entertainment next year hosting WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia?
If they're getting paid, I mean, good for them. I hope that they have a good contract.
Yeah. Okay. Very well. Let's move on to jobs and the sports economy. Sports generate massive economic activity, but not always good jobs. What's your plan to grow the sports economy in a way that creates middle class jobs, not just billionaire owners and minimum wage stadium workers?
Well, I think this is across the board, right? It would benefit the entire country if we continued cutting back taxes on the middle class, if we continued cutting back and incentivizing counties and states to cut back on regulations on home and businesses, on homes and businesses, on home management. And honestly, this is a conversation that I was having yesterday as well. The housing market in California is kind of like it's been somewhat at a standstill. We have a supply that's kind of been sitting there. Some of it was starting to sell because people were anticipating because of the war in Iran, things could just go haywire. But the supply has it's really not moving at the click that it was moving a few years ago, and that a lot of that is housing costs are so high, it's so expensive to maintain a home, and on top of that, interest rates are through the roof, right? So I think we have to go back to a policy where we put the middle class and maintaining a large middle class ahead of everything else. So across the board, just cut all as many taxes as possible at the federal level. Create incentives for states and counties to cut that as well. And all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing more incentive for all of these sports businesses to start hiring more people, to start growing their businesses, for people to start businesses from their homes. You know, Google, YouTube, Apple, these are all businesses that were started in California in people's garages, right?
Right.
And went become multi-billion-dollar businesses. So, yeah, let's go back to being creating an environment that's not hostile toward businesses.
Let's continue to something that's going to be happening in your district, the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics and the Super Bowl next year, two of the largest global events. How do you ensure California doesn't repeat past mistakes where host cities lost money, saw crime rise, or displaced working families?
You know, my understanding is that the host country, it's like a double-edged sword, right?
Right.
You get a ton of publicity, you get a lot of positive, messaging about the city or the country or the state where all these games are being hosted. But at the same time, it does come with a cost, and that cost, like you mentioned, can involve crime and all these other things. You got a lot of. I heard a lot of stories about the World Cup in Germany when it happened in Germany many years ago. I think it was like 2004, 2002. And the stories of people just being drunk everywhere. The Olympics in Rio, so many crazy stories I've heard about that. So what I would say is to remember that there are people who live in these towns that, you're getting sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, tourists coming in to watch these games. Say this is part of my platform as well, but safety has to be number one priority in that sense. We have to make sure that our streets are safe, that our police have the resources they need to continue ensuring that the safety of the citizens who live there isn't compromised, right? This is at the same time, it becomes a terrific opportunity for people who live in these cities to make, a little extra money. There are many situations of people who have been in towns or own property in towns where Olympics were happening, and they were able to make a considerable amount of money, sometimes more money in a month than they would have made all year renting their property. So, but you have to ensure that these people have the safeguards, primarily through public safety, to have their property be secured, as well as their safety when they're going, as well as just in general when they're going out in the street, to go home, to take the kids to school, to just go shopping, work, all that stuff. There's an element. I mean, people get excited, right? They get excited with these games. They're in a new place that they may have never been to, and not everybody has the same discernment,
Right.
right? Well, we have to make sure that the citizens living here are taken care of. And look, I spoke actually to the police chief in Burbank a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about all the new systems that they have a whole drone network that they can before they even dispatch police to a 911 call, they can have a drone out there very quickly to see what the vehicle or the person involved in the situation, what they're going through, and they can, they can track that person at a very low cost, and then just dispatch the police car and go capture that person. We're getting to a point that's very advanced. So, obviously there are privacy issues, but as long as it's being used to ensure the safety of folks, I think that we should continue funding these sorts of programs, especially when a town is receiving an extraordinary amount of people in a very short amount of time.
Okay. Going to talk about the Super Bowl because it's going to happen first, and then you keep talking about taxes, so I thought this would be a perfect segue. Super Bowl 60 was in San Francisco, and a lot of athletes realized that California has what is known as a jock tax. And so Californians' top marginal income tax rate is 13.3% for high earners. In 2026, some estimates, including state disability insurance, SDI, place the effective top rate for wage income as high as 14.6%. For Super Bowl 60 in 2026, winning players face significant reductions to their $178,000 bonuses due to this tax. In some cases, high-earning stars actually lost money by playing the Super Bowl in San Francisco. How do we eliminate this radical tax?
Yeah, that's crazy. Unfortunately, our state, the state we live in, our state is just it's been run by Democrats for so long. They've had a supermajority at the state assembly and the state senate for about 60 years. They've had most of the governorships. That's how they can get this sort of policy implemented without any sort of pushback. Their policies are all cloaked in compassion. They talk about, oh yes, tax the rich so we can help and all the tax money going into the pockets of all their NGO cronies. We definitely need to have a total doge and overhaul of California, see where the money's going, and really start giving people tax breaks. These guys break their back playing football and to entertain millions of people around the world. And they should be allowed to make their money and keep as much of it as possible. I have trust that the individual has better discernment on how to spend their money than the government. So that's why I think most people should be allowed to keep as much as possible of their income.
Okay. What does, go back to the Olympics really quick, what does responsible hosting look like under your leadership?
Like I mentioned, public safety is a big aspect. I think infrastructure as well. And this is something that I suspect LA may be a bit lacking. I know that our airport just went through major renovations at LAX in preparation for the World Cup that's coming this year, as well as the Olympics in a couple of years. As far as a network, a public transit network, unfortunately, I think we're a bit lacking in that. I've lived in New York. New York has a very extensive public transit network. It definitely has its quirks. I wouldn't say it's a model that most cities should replicate because it's old, it's very expensive to keep, it's always operating at a loss, and it's not really something that most people, if they had the money, would subject themselves to. I believe LA could figure something out better. The solution so far hasn't really been something that I think is what most Angelenos think it qualifies as good transportation. These above ground trains that are supposed to be
yes.
but are not only an eyesore, but they're absolutely inefficient, and they end up being just as expensive if you were to put them on the ground. And they almost they eat up a whole lane of traffic, and just don't end up delivering the results that they're supposed to deliver. Same thing with the bicycle lanes. What it is with California and creating viable public transportation. It always seems like our people in government, our politicians here are so much more worried about these ambitious projects that they never actually think about the viability and the long-term effects they would have. That said, I think the one thing that will really be affected, I think, will be public transportation. Big concern there, because you're going to have people from all over the world.
Right.
If they're all renting cars, I mean, we already kind of have that with Disney and all this stuff. But if you're having just a huge influx for a short amount of time of people who are renting cars, who aren't used to driving here, who don't really know how our roads work, I assume that there may be an increase in traffic stops, in crashes, minor and big crashes. People are coming from cultures where they can drink and drive. Right. Minimal consequences. They're going to be here. I mean, it's going to be a disaster. I think that hopefully it'll be something very easy to implement. Hopefully the city pushes all of these folks to take Uber and rideshare instead, because that could be an easy way to just bring in a lot of money into the local economy without just bringing an unnecessary aspect of traffic and danger to the streets. So, I have a lot of friends who are Uber drivers, and I'm sure that they would appreciate, having more, not just more rides, but more of those like high-paying rides, right?
Yes. Final question on this topic. Soccer players, football players, Olympic athletes are going to lose $71,000 in net loss because of this jock tax. What do you say to the teams, to the athletes who say, schedule me in New York, schedule me in Dallas, schedule me in Chicago, I'll play anywhere but the Rose Bowl?
It's unfortunate. It's, California has to get, like, our leaders, it's not even the state. I hesitate to say California. Our political leaders in this state, they have to get their act together, because we're already losing so many businesses. We're going to end up losing a very profitable business. Even Saudi Arabia recognizes how good sports is, but clearly California, these commie crats that we have out here, they're dedicated to destroying like every aspect of our economy. And look, sports has always been something that's been big in California. We have some of the biggest sports brands in the world.
Yes.
Right? You have the 49ers. You have the Rams, you have the LA Kings, you have the Dodgers, you have the Padres. Like, there's so many great teams here. The Angels, and that doesn't even touch on the non-professional side. All the UCLA, USC, outside of the scope of the traditional sports. I mean, you have wonderful track teams, swim teams, all around athletes, and they're all gonna suffer because our state just is inhospitable for business.
Final question. We'll end it on a personal note. What's your favorite professional California sports team and why?
I think I'd have to say the Dodgers. Okay. It's somewhere between the Dodgers and the Rams. I say this, like, even though I lived in New York for a long time, I should be like a Yankees fan or something, but I never really had a baseball team.
It's fair.
The reason why I chose the Dodgers is because a friend of mine actually last year, he got us tickets to go watch the Dodgers. And I was like, you know what? I actually like this team.
Yeah.
So it was the first time that I actually connected with a baseball team. And I was sitting there in the bleachers or whatever, the stadium. And this is something that blew me away too, because most people in LA, like the reputation, LA is a super woke city. Everybody is like a Democrat here, right?
It's really not, though.
What's that?
I said it's really not, though. I go to LA all the time, and it's beautiful, and everybody's lovely and friendly and happy, and
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. I was sitting there at this game. It was funny enough. The game that I chose to be a Dodgers fan was the one game that they lost to the Phillies in the last playoffs.
okay.
But I'm sitting there, and this was before LA started losing. LA was still leading 1-1. And I have a friend of mine who's also a Republican, and we're just like talking to people, and he starts talking to the person next to him. And, for some reason they start talking about Trump, and the person makes it known that he's a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And the person behind us, like, I guess, overheard that and was like, "You guys Trump supporters? I'm a Trump supporter too." The person in front of us, and then the person right next to me, and then this lady says, "You guys Trump supporters?" Like, she raises her pant leg, and she's wearing like the Trump socks, where he's doing like the YMCA dance. It felt like I was in a sitcom because it felt unreal. I was like, I thought everybody was supposed to be woke, especially with like the ice raids and everything was at the time. And the Dodgers took a very much an anti-deportation stance at the time. They refused to cooperate.
Sang the national anthem in Spanish.
They did do that. Yes, they did do that as well. But it was the kind of thing of like, oh, okay, we're all on the same page, So it's always good. That's one of the things I love about sports is sports transcends just the game. It's about building community, right? Whether you're playing it with your friends or whether you're watching it in the stands, it's about coming together and enjoying this moment, this thing that's unfolding in real time right in front of us. There's no other experience like that. The closest thing that you could get to it in theater is watching an improv theater troupe, but then it's it's a little quirky. It's not the same thing. You don't have the same highs and lows, right? So, yeah, I guess the Dodgers would have to be it. I like the Rams, but I'm really a Giants fan. But I like the Rams as a team. But yeah, the Lakers. I've been to several Lakers games. I love them as a team. They're a terrific team. Their branding is lovely. But I'm at heart. I grew up kind of all over the place. My teams are all over the place. But I grew up in the Jordan era, and I was living in Florida in a boarding school at the time, and watching all those Jordan games against the Utah Jazz, like really, ingrained a passion for basketball at the time, and I've always been a Bulls fan because of that.
Okay. Why should I vote? Well, here, I'll turn it into me. Why should I vote for you and not Scott Myers?
Well, I would say this. I represent, and I have been working to build an infrastructure and an energy that's relatively new in the Republican Party. There are a lot of youth and college organizations that I've set up as of the last few months. I'm actually going out in the field and building these college organizations. I'm going out to different faith communities and building, coalitions with them. I'm bringing them. A lot of these folks, this is what a lot of people don't realize, about 40%, when you take out the NPPs, just people who identify as Republican and conservatives, about 40% of the state is actually Republican. That's true. The main reason why Republicans lose is because we've kind of, number one, we kind of abandoned the Republican brand and tried to be Democrats, like the Blue Dog Democrats, adopting socially liberal positions on many issues. The thing is that base is still there. Those folks, those socially conservative, those fiscally conservative folks are there. They've just disengaged. I, in fact, had this lady. I went to this Baptist church this past weekend, and I had this short, cute little Asian old lady who was like, I'm Republican. I love Trump. I want to get involved, but I just feel like I can't do anything to help.
Yeah.
You know, so, there are a lot of Republicans that are on the sidelines just watching and praying and hoping that the party will find itself again, that it will recenter itself in its principles. And, I'm actively going out there and bringing these voters back in and telling them, you can come back into the party. Let's go. Let's work together. Let's reactivate. Become a part of my coalition. Volunteer for me. Vote for me. If you're inclined to. And that's really what I'm focused on doing. I want to build an infrastructure. I want to turn the state red, and I'm very realistic about how that can be done. You don't do it by purging people, that agree with you but agree with you on 98% of the issues, but disagree with you on 2% of them. Right.
Right.
I think that we're stronger when we all come together and work together. And that's why I believe that I'm the best candidate for this, because I'm actually out there in the communities. I'm building community, and I want to hear from my constituents. I actually do. It's a joke that one of my friends says every time we're door knocking. I give them my card, which has my actual cell phone on it. It's, not like a random number. It's my actual cell phone that I've had for the last 10, 12 years. Right. And my friend says, well, now you have his number. You can just eat his ear off when he's in Washington in case he does something you don't like. And that's true. I mean, people forget. People run for office and they forget. You are a representative. You're there on behalf of the people. And that's ultimately what I want to do. I'm going to be accountable to my community. The incumbent right now, she does one town hall per year, basically. That's just highly curated Zoom call where you have to write your question beforehand, and her team approves it, and only about 2 or 3 people get to ask questions. So to me, that's not transparency. That's not accountability. That's not representative. That's somebody trying to hold on to power, control the narrative around them, and the access that people have to it, and that's not representative. So I hope I answered your question. But
no, you did. You did.
It's a bit of a radical vision in this sort of corporate political environment that we're in. Everybody's about like clamping down and making sure the money keeps coming in. But I think that we have to go back as politicians to a culture of service, right? When we go back to that, instead of serving lobbyists and special interests, and in some cases foreign interests, right? We're putting everything else ahead of the American people, and I don't like that. I want to see my community strong.
I do too. He's Dennis Faitosa. He's running for California Congressional District number 30. That is the Pasadena, Glendale, Los Angeles metropolitan area.
Exactly.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Dennis.